thank you so much for inviting me, Alicia, to be a part of this conference. It's really exciting. I really feel very privileged when I get to come talk to the community. I think the folks at the university are a little cross-eyed by this point in time when they see me walking in the staff meeting or something. Oh, here she's back again. So new faces. This is exciting for me. And do I have a clicker for this?
You have Joey.
I have Joey, little kangaroo. I'm going to talk about organizational disaster resilience, and hopefully that starts to make some sense what that means by the end of it. If not, I hope to leave a little bit of time for questions and to make it more of a conversation. So take the next slide. Click. What is your plan? It might be a little small, but they say there in Dilbert, our disaster recovery plan goes something like this: help, 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 and someday we will have a budget. Right? Let's not be like the Dilbert cartoon. Let's actually take some time, whether it's you go out for a cup of iced tea after this with your office mates and you talk about it for another hour or 5 hours or whatever, or you bring it back to your office. Just a little bit of a plan is really a help. So hopefully we'll get some ideas today about what you can do back at your office. So I want to talk about why it's a good idea to be prepared. Possibly at some point in the future, there could be something bad that happens. I hope that that's very informative and specific enough for you to do something with. We probably should prepare because FEMA tells us to. We should prepare because there's a TV show about it, Disaster Preppers, and they make it look really terrifying, actually. And there could be a Sharknado, there could be an earthquake that wipes out all of a continent. Well, those are actually really not very good reasons to prepare. There's some, a lot of myths, a lot of stereotypes around disaster preppers and what that looks like. And I think there are some ways to make it real, applicable, feasible, possible, something that you can do with a little bit of time and a little bit of focus. So But why actually should we be prepared as organizations, specifically within the work that you guys do? Basically because you will be responding to emergencies. You will be part of the response network for that flood, for that fire in Oak Ridge, something like that. There will be impacts, and you already are part of that network, whether it's somebody, sort of a personal and a small, immediate disaster for a family, you're already part of that. So I think that we can't ignore that anymore, that the community network that we have, the neighborhood associations, the church groups, the community organizations like yours, that is the response network. All response really is local. We could sit around and we could wait for FEMA to come here after the big earthquake. They're going to be 3 weeks, maybe, or more, before they can actually get here. So it's really about what are the resources we have in the community, and the resources we have are you. So that's why we need to prepare. You're a trusted network. The work that you do, may seem sort of like a slog on a day-to-day basis and really frustrating. Where are we going? What's the point of all of it? But I'll actually stay on the previous one. So you are part of that trusted network, and when we see this across the country, when an incident happens, whether it's the Hurricane Sandy, folks are going to turn to your organization and say, how can I help you do your work? Because I know that you're part of the local community. I know that you know how to distribute items, information. I know that people trust you. You're part of that. Formal and informal responders will come to you. You're going to get volunteers. You're going to get I heard a story from Megan O'Hara from the Red Cross here. She was up in Oso, Washington, and there was a local sort of a food bank, sort of a meal site. These ladies got together and did meals every week for the community. And so when the Southern Baptists came in with their reinforcements and their supplies, and some of the FEMA response folks said, we want to support what you're doing and make it more and be able to feed more people for a longer period of time. Those ladies sort of felt a little bit uncomfortable at first. They said, well, how is that? How does that jeopardize what we do? Does it change what we do? So you will be part of what the first responders that when they get here will come looking for. That's also why we have to prepare. You will see a huge swell in money, volunteers, donations. So thinking about, yes, how you will serve your clients and sort of what does it look like to get here during a snowstorm, but also there will be a lot more attention, a lot more resources coming to you, so how do you want to use those resources when they come to you? I'll take the next one now, thank you. And I think this is part of what actually you've been talking about all day, is that your clients deserve you at your best, and they deserve the full range of services. And so everything that we can do ahead of time, from talking about crisis intervention and how do we keep ourselves well to serve our clients, how do we prepare our organization to be there when even more people will need us. So this is a little bit of theory, so put your, your academic hat on for a moment. Organizational resilience, when they talk about it sort of at a larger level, we see there we have our initial condition of the community. Think that would be the initial condition of your organization. Do you communicate well today? Do you transfer equipment well today? How well do you know who's really gonna call the shots today? So taking a look at where you are today, and then when an event happens, we see a couple of different ways that organizations respond. Sort of those low resilience areas where it really tanks afterwards. Might be, it takes 4 or 5 days to figure out where we're gonna relocate. It takes another 4 or 5 days to figure out how to get stuff there. It's sort of a real long recovery process. And the high resilience are for those organizations that have thought about it ahead of time. They put those plans in place, they've tested it, they've tried it, they've had a couple experiences and said, well, what we thought was gonna work out for a plan doesn't actually work out, so let's have something else in our plan. And that difference between that top blue dotted line and those other red dotted lines, in my opinion, that's a choice. An organization gets to choose if it's going to be resilient or sort of floundering by what it does before an incident. So that extreme event, it could knock us off. There are some universities in the New Orleans area which still are not at the full enrollment that they had before Katrina, and some universities which are at greater enrollment. And that there are some choices they made there to make that possible. Thanks. So planning, thinking about what you're going to talk about at your next staff meeting, it'll be number 1 or 2 on the agenda. I'm asking you for that. There are sort of 2 ways that you can approach resilience planning, disaster preparedness planning. And one is looking at the hazards, what are those specific scenarios, and the other is what are some of those impacts. So it sort of falls off the bottom there. But so hazards, that's the severe weather. We had 2 major snowstorms this winter. That was fun. We'll probably get some more of those, and they'll be coming more frequently as well. The earthquake, Alicia mentioned, hopefully everybody knows that's on the horizon for us. That's one of those we don't know exactly when, but that would be our sort of most catastrophic scenario. Floods, fires, those could be pretty local. It's Dexter, or it could be a huge swath of Oregon. When I talk about the impact, and so when I move from the slide, we're going to talk about each of those 2 approaches. But when I talk about the impacts, that is, in the business, we call that continuity planning. If somebody is an IT wonk out there, you may have heard that. Business continuity of operations, those are some of the buzzwords around it, but pretty simply, it's what do you do about your people, your places, and your things. That's it. So we'll talk about each of those in turn. So when we're talking about specific hazards, we want to take a look at where you are. Are you located in Bonita? Are you in Oak Ridge? Are you downtown Eugene? Where are you? And what is that environment? What are you susceptible to? If you're susceptible to severe weather, which all of us probably are, and we had that snowstorm, we might think about tree and limb management near to the power lines of our facility, or we want to make sure that the driveways are going to be able to stay clear of that tree debris, and so just leaving us the snow. So there are some very low-cost things that you can do to mitigate specific hazards. Pipes, preparing for power loss. Take the next one. When it comes to earthquake, there's sort of 2 approaches there. We've got a non-structural approach, which is all the stuff inside of the building. I think about more than 70% of the damage from most earthquakes that we have here in this country, because our building codes are pretty sound, is all the stuff inside. So the lights, is this going to fall over? How much is it going to cost me to pick this back up again? The equipment, the things that you have in your office, your computer screens, those things. So if you can secure those things by getting a little lip on the edge of the shelf so that glass pieces don't fall down off the bookshelf, getting a museum putty to keep a vase on the shelf. checking where your filing cabinets are and moving those outside of the door, past the doorway. We want to make sure that everybody can get out of the facility after an earthquake as well. So those little simple non-structural pieces will go a long way to helping you get back to business as soon as possible afterwards, because you're not going to spend a week and a half cleaning up the paper and the equipment and having to wait another week for a new computer to come. So if you do those things ahead of time, that's what we call that non-structural mitigation. Structural pieces, that's a little bit more difficult. If you're a homeowner or a renter, there are some things that you can do. It might be a bigger discussion if you're in a rented facility or if you're sharing a facility with a place, but putting water heaters. I think probably the folks at the personal preparedness session talked some about this as well. Next slide. So for flood and fire, and I stuck with the severe weather and earthquake and flood and fire. Those are sort of our main hazards here. You could prepare for a solar flare if you wanted to. You could prepare for asteroid impact if you wanted to, but I thought I'd stick with the sort of more feasible, achievable things. So knowing if you're in the flood zone, there's DOGAMI, D-O-G-A-M-I. You can go to their website and they have a hazards viewer, type in any address, your church, your home, your kid's school, and find out, is it in the floodplain? If it's in the floodplain, they say that's a 100-year flood zone, which doesn't mean it will happen January 1st every 100 years. It means that, sort of statistics-wise, it's relatively unlikely, but it's definitely still possible. So just being aware if you're in the flood zone and then taking some steps within your facility to lessen those impacts. Again, that's the mitigation component. The fire hazard zone is pretty interesting here in Oregon. Some of the folks, if you're out on the edges of town, you may be in the wildland-urban interface. So that's a place where wildfire could pretty quickly impact our community. Downtown, in more urban areas, it's more like a house fire impact. So thinking about how would our site be impacted by a fire? Do we have a lot of trees? Are we sort of out in the woods that? So those are some of the hazards of approach to planning. So then the other approach to planning, the impact planning, that continuity of operations planning, that's where I spend a lot of my time actually, and that's the people, places, and the things. So first of all, you think about who are our people? What do they do? On a normal, gorgeous Friday, and I promise you it's really lovely outside and you'll get there very soon. What do we do just normally? And then you can think about what would we do if we didn't have some of them because they're sick maybe, or they can't get here for some reason or another, car breaks down, pretty typical stuff. And you notice those are not catastrophic scenarios. I'm not saying you have to make a plan for how you're going to do your staffing in an earthquake. I'm just saying, just start with those easy, those sort of very feasible scenarios. Somebody's out for a week because they have a head cold, because their mom has a head cold, right? So keeping it sort of away from that, people love to go to the catastrophic scenario, and that's, we're not actually going to know all the full impacts of the earthquake or if the dams go or something like that. So sticking within those reasonable, pretty typical, we call them chronic hazards. The other thing about that, staying within those more realistic hazards, is that you probably actually already planned for that. You had someone go out on maternity leave, you've had someone retire recently, you've done continuity planning. How do we take care of Jim's functions, the things that he does for the next 3 months until we get that new hire on? So you actually probably already are continuity experts in your office. So don't be afraid of that planning. Cross-training, all that stuff, it's great. So people, places, and things. People, we talked about that. Places, your facilities. Some of that is pretty specific for the work that you do. If it's a kitchen, or if it's particular requirements for space, for serving, and that sort of thing. Thinking about what would damage to your facility do to your functions. And here's the question here, is if you had to relocate, what would you need? What would it take to be in a new spot? What are the parameters that you need? And just sort of identifying all those things. Well, it has to have power, it has to be XYZ dimensions large, it has to have a private space to have personal conversations, maybe that's part of the work that you do. So what are those parameters that you need in a new and different space? I wish the pretty big slides, but I wish those pictures were a little bit bigger now. Those are pictures post-earthquake of a store at the top, and you see everything has come off the shelf. And at the bottom, it looks like kind of a warehouse, and the shelves have gone over in the earthquake. So what are the things that you need to do what you do? It may be the food component, that's a huge part of it for a lot of you, the inventory, the supplies, but also the equipment and the data. Do you need to track who is receiving your services? Okay, well, what do you need? Access to a database, access to the internet, do you have printed rosters, those sort of things. And you can tie in utilities here too. Do you need water? Do you need access to, natural gas or electricity, that sort of thing? And thinking 3 deep in terms of sort of your solutions, or if you're going to catalog your vendors, could be a really helpful activity for the work that you do. The people that bring these kind of supplies and the other kind of supplies, thinking if you've got 3 different options. So if there's something that happens here that is not impacting you at all directly, if there's just a major bridge out on I-5, our community is fine, it's sunny, but I-5 is totally backed up. What are your options for getting what you need here in the community? So those are some things to think about for planning for the impacts. Take the next one. Some emergency response planning do's and don'ts. So think about your specific response actions. So fire, that's evacuate. Earthquake, you want to duck, cover, and hold, and then evacuate. Some people say, well, we'll get out as fast as possible. If we have the earthquake that they say we're going to have, you could be an Iron Man and you won't be able to stand. So we just want to duck, cover, hold, and then evacuate, get your things, and then go. Every facility should be evaluated by a structural engineer before it's brought back into use after the earthquake. Put in some plans in place about shutting down equipment, especially, I don't know how many folks actually have kitchens in their facility, but if there's gas lines, that sort of thing, just understanding how your facility works in that way would be a really good idea. Assembly locations, some of these things actually are absolutely in the emergency assessment plan that I know Food-Filling County has shared with all of you. So some of you in the audience probably have already documented these things, which is great. Emergency supply kits, I'll stay on the previous, thank you. Data and documents. Some don'ts, I would say don't do it all at once. Let's be really honest about the time that we have, about all the other things we have to do. If you set the goal of a year to develop your plan, that sounds really feasible, that sounds achievable, that sounds like, with it, you're going to have some experiences over the winter, and that's going to inform your plan. You're going to have new staff come on board, and that's going to inform your plan. So give it a good amount of time to be developed, but then move at a consistent pace with your planning. So I'm not going to say you have to have a plan by the start of the school year. And don't do it by yourself. I'm sure you're all very wonderful and brilliant people, but you don't know everything about your organization, about your vendors, about your facility. There are people that will have the information. And really, you can build that brain trust within your organization and build that capacity for response by sharing the information. It'd be really easy if I just went into the French department and said, okay, here, French department, this is your plan. But if the French department isn't a part of developing the plan, that doesn't nobody any good at all. And other people have great ideas. You may have staff that have been through different kinds of incidents. Maybe they worked or lived in a place that was affected by fires or a tornado or something like that. And so they may have experience to share. And don't keep it on the shelf. We want to definitely keep these things alive, have them be living documents. Exercising and training, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and use real incidents. I think we learn the most at the university, certainly in our office, we learn the most when we actually go through something and we find out that all of our best ideas about how to communicate were just ideas, and when you get to ground truth them in the moment, people are doing 17 other things and need a different plan for how to communicate. And that's okay, actually. If you're testing your plan, if you're going through an incident and you do something else, then the other side of that is you debrief it and say, okay, why did we do something else? Is the problem that nobody knew what our plan was? Is the problem that we don't have the resources, the staff capacity to have one person do all the communication or something like that? And that's a really healthy part of the process. So I would say don't be afraid when your reality of response doesn't meet the plan. That's an opportunity to say, well, we should update the plan to reflect what we will do, or we need to be training our people to be following a different response protocol. So it's just a learning opportunity, it's not a failure. And and revise the plan. So don't keep it on the shelf. Take it off. Have it be a living document that you're using on a regular basis. You use your response plan as part of the training for new staff. Maybe on a lovely day later this fall, you try to do everything in a tent outside just to see how it works, right? So there are ways to make it alive for you. And there is absolutely some really wonderful assistance out there for developing plans. Certainly the Fruitful County Guide that a lot of you are familiar with, that questions, there are some very basic and really important questions. Who's in charge and how do you get a hold of them, and do you know where you are and where you're going? And so if you haven't gone through that assessment process yet, I think that would be a great place to start. And it helps there be some consistency across the organizations. And if one organization is stuck with how to answer a question, maybe you can take a look at what your neighbors did, and that would be helpful. The Red Cross has a program called Ready Rating, and it's pretty similar. It's a lot of yes/no questions, and it sort of steps you through. And so if you wanted to say, within the year we will be ready rating from the Red Cross, that would be a really great goal to have. They have some questions. Do you have an emergency operations plan? Do you have people that are trained on CPR and first aid and that sort of thing? So that's a resource. If you want to get more into the business continuity planning, those people, places, and things, and really documenting what you do, how you do it, and what would you do if you didn't have all those things, the Open for Business is a template provided by the Institute for Business and Home Safety, and it's called Open for Business. They have an easy form, and that also is a really great template for just walking through and listing everything and cataloging it. So take it there. Final plug on planning assistance. I'm a part, as a university representative, of the Lane Preparedness Coalition, and that is a lot of the response agencies locally, so fire, EMS, cities, and that sort of a thing. And we have a couple of web pages there at preparelane.org, resources for individuals, for business. A lot of these things are documented. Some of the things that you guys talked about in the personal preparedness, those tips, so that's all available there. Take the next one. So I know that some folks did the individual preparedness, but I would really be doing my whole profession the disservice if I didn't give a little plug for individual preparedness. We have our friends there in case of emergency: break glass, remove bucket, and bury head in the sand. I don't think that's a really great idea, but there are ways to make it possible to take real action, so we'll talk about those. And why? I think when we talk about, I don't know how many staff you have in your organization, if it's 1, if it's 5, 25, trying to motivate all those people to make a kit at home, and let's put a handful of things together in the office. Well, why do we want to do that? And what we say to the university staff is, we want you to be as prepared as possible at home, because if you know that your kids and your dog and your mom and your sister are okay, if you know that, you're actually going to come back to work at the university sooner. So if your staff is prepared at home, they will more quickly be able to come back and help your organization and help your clients with their response. So it's all tied together. Your response as an organization, individual preparedness will lead to that community resilience we hope, and we'll stay on that timeline. Also, when we talk about individual preparedness, I think a lot of times people think that it's just one more thing I have to do, and I already have to grow tomatoes, and I already have to dust my house, and it's just one more thing I have to be doing. Well, there may be things that you're already doing that are helpful for emergency preparedness. Do you already back up your data? You've had 1 or too many laptops fall apart on you, or spill coffee on them or something, and now you're really habitual electronic data backup. That's emergency preparedness, right? That's already on your way. Are you a bike rider? Anybody ride bikes? Great. So post-earthquake, post-major flood, we won't be able to traverse the streets with cars. There won't be gas, and there will be lots of debris everywhere. So if you're a bike rider, you're able to get around. So count that as emergency preparedness. Good job. If you're a camper, if you go camping, my boss, his strategy is that the camping gear is the emergency preparedness gear, and So he gets to convince his wife to use the camping gear because it's part of refreshing their emergency supplies. So she's into one, he's into the other, and everybody has a good time. Actually, if you have a cell phone battery, extra cell phone battery, communication plan with your family, if you're already CPR and first aid trained, all of those things are already emergency preparedness because those are going to be applicable no matter what the incident is. So congratulations, if you're already doing it. You're halfway there, so keep going. Take the next slide, thank you. There was a really great CDC campaign a couple years back, and I love it when the internet breaks. It's really my favorite thing. So the CDC put out this slogan, this tagline, if you're prepared for the zombie apocalypse, then you're prepared for any emergency. And it broke their website, and they got 1 million more Twitter followers than they ever had before, and it just really exploded everything. Because people love zombies. It's a really fun and sort of silly, sometimes scary idea. So maybe there's a way. Maybe your office is really into the lolcats online. So, lolcat says get prepared. Whatever it is, find the hook for your audience, and they can be moving forward with you. So these are some things that the folks in the other session already heard: water, food, and your 72-hour kit. Actually, the 72-hour kit idea, Hurricane Sandy really blew that out of the water, no pun intended, because it was several weeks before power came back on in many places. So we're really looking at a 3-week kit if you can put that together. But anything is better than nothing. So some next steps, both individually and organizationally. There's a service through, I think it's Lane Council of Governments, but the City of Eugene Emergency Management website has this also. It's the SENS alert. SENS stands for Community Emergency Notification System. And you can register several addresses and several phone numbers, and then you would get a text message or a phone call if something happens. So you can subscribe your kid's school and your workplace location and your home location. So if there was a fire, coming down out of the woods towards your office, you would get a notification that if there's a hazmat spill, something like that. So that's lcog.org/alertme. Because reverse 911 only goes to landlines. I don't have a landline anymore, so I sign up for the alertme. Another great next step is that Flood County assessment, starting with that document and working through that as an organization. The individual preparedness and the practicing your emergency plan. So I want to give you a little bit of a tool here with the exercises. If you go back to the staff meeting and your coworkers say, what did you learn? What do we do? And what's the next thing for us? You say, let's have a tabletop exercise. Say, what is that? So tabletop exercise, you just sit at a table. There's no weights, there's no lifting, there's no jumping jacks. You're just talking about the scenario. And that's different than a functional exercise, which would actually be moving around, trying to do your operations in a tent or something like that. But just starting with the conversation, I think people sometimes say, well, if we're going to practice, it has to be a full evacuation of the building, and we have to do everything in another site, and that can be a lot of work. But if you start with a tabletop, and you just talk about a scenario, take half an hour and say, what would we do if the power went off right now? And just write it down. There's no wrong answers. Just sort of, okay, well, I would call Alicia, or I would go get the emergency kit and go make sure there's no one in the bathroom. What are those things that you're going to be doing? And just documenting it. And if you run through a handful of scenarios, you'll start to see common themes about what your emergency response is going to be in your area. So, go do some tabletop exercises. Take the next one. So, that's basically everything I wanted to cover. And talk about why we want to prepare, why it's important. You guys are a trusted network, and folks will be coming to you for services, but also to help provide services. So you're already a part of the community network, and that is going to become even more important if something significant happens here in the community. Talk about the 2 approaches to planning. Take a hazard-specific approach, which is all the things that go wrong, or the impact approach, which is that continuity planning, people, places, and things, and the individual preparedness. So I've got a video that I hope sort of brings it all together and shows why it's important and what happens if you do prepare. There's 3 things I want you to listen for in the video. A line about the big difference is the quality. Things are different this time. And why I like that line a lot is because it shows that the organization took steps to improve. This is Moore, Oklahoma, which experienced 2 very significant tornadoes. So they're going to talk about how it was different for them from one incident to the next. Also, take a listen for how the country mobilizes to support more. And that people wanted to give to an organization that they knew would have a local impact. So you hear stories about that. And then lastly, the 3rd thing, that the work that they do is more than just food and water. It's about a personal connection. And that's what your organizations do so well, and that's what you will be continuing to do, if there's a significant incident. So listen for those things. The big difference, country mobilizing, and more of that personal connection.
And I heard the roar coming. And people tell you it's like a train. That's not even a comparison. It's like a jet engine.
I was wondering if you can tell me how we can get some help, because we have to throw away all of our food in the icebox, everything, and I need help.
Well, one of the things we have when we know a disaster is taking place, that all the food we have in our inventory is immediately available to the disaster. Well, the first thing that came to my mind when the tornadoes were coming was what happened in '99 when the tornadoes came through Moore, Oklahoma.
We were in the '99 tornado, the May 3rd, '99. Lost everything in that tornado. The big difference has been quality, not necessarily, there's quantity too, but quality. Things are just different this time from the perspective of, I think people have brought their best out.
Initial disasters all have in common is initial shock. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I've lost everything.
Even if we was to plan to build back, it'll be 13 months before they can even start on it.
Could see where it was going, and it was getting closer and closer to our house, and all I could think is, it's going to, really do some damage. Our house will be gone. My kids are in that school, they're going to be hurt. And you just feel helpless.
And the amazing part about it is then people coming together, not only in this community, but from out the United States, wanting to help.
We came from Cody, Wyoming. All the locals there obviously saw us on the news, and we just tried to do what we could.
From Oxford, Alabama. I'm here because I knew that this is what I was supposed to do, volunteer.
This all comes from everyone in Mississippi, because we are very thankful for all the help that was given to us through Katrina.
I'm here from the Community Food Bank in New Jersey. I've been in Oklahoma helping out for about a month now. I think it makes you appreciate more in life when you come down here and you see how easily everything can be destroyed.
2 trailers, there's everything from Pampers to toothpaste. They come from the general public in Muscatine and Davenport, Iowa. I thought it'd be cool to bring the Iowa trucks down and have the OU players unload it.
It's really incredible that the people of Iowa truckloads of stuff here to the Oklahoma Food Bank, and get all my big linemen here. They're the right ones to unload a truck.
It don't take 3 of you guys for a 4x8 sheet of pipe. Come on, guys.
We knew immediately all the calls we were getting, people wanting to help. that supplies from all over the country, food and other things, were going to start pouring into Oklahoma City. So we immediately started going out and looking for additional warehouse space. And we literally, within days of the disaster hitting, had anywhere from 50 to 75 truckloads of supplies and food on the way to Oklahoma City through the Feeding America network and food banks. We actually set up a relief center within a few days in Moore, Oklahoma, to have so people could come in and actually get what they needed. Really wasn't so much looking for food and water; they needed all that, and we had it available to them. They wanted to talk to someone.
You sound like a fish.
Extraordinary things started happening. Ordinary people started doing extraordinary things to help people in the relief effort, and that happened all over the country. People just wanted to help because people wanted to give donations to an organization where they knew it would be used locally and the donations would stay local. And we thought that was really important. We had staff from Kansas City, from New Jersey, from Arizona, from Texas.
My name is Tony Petrocchi. I'm down here from Kansas City, Missouri. I work for Harvesters Community Food Network. It feels really good to be part of this, helping everybody.
My name is Brandon. I'm from Walmart. I've been helping the food bank here for exactly 1 month. It's really nice to kind of help out. Being I live in Warren, it kind of has a little special feeling for me.
The partnership with News 9 has been an extraordinary partnership. They've been willing to support us and, more importantly, their viewers. They also went on live on the air with Text to Give campaign that raised over $300,000.
Just text tornado to 32333.
By texting the word food to 32333.
It amazes me to meet people who have lost everything, yet they have this energy to be here to give back and help other people.
Thank you so much. Your donations have helped tremendous amounts of people. They'll continue to help even as we pick up the pieces and move on. It really takes a big burden off. Even to those of us who didn't lose everything we had, it's still a big help. And we thank you so much. Please keep it coming.